Let's take this further with Chairperson of the Ministerial Advisory Committee on COVID-19 vaccines, Professor Barry Schoub, joining us by Skype. Prof, always good to speak to you. So 325,620 doses is what we're expecting to receive tonight. And the most pressing priority at this stage is to get those jabs into the arms of over 60s by the 17th of May.
Yeah, good evening, Thembekile. Yeah, absolutely. I think it's very good news. Obviously, the arrival of vaccines already on our shores, and I think it's coming for midnight tonight, is very welcome news. We did have the backlog because of the pause. I think that involved about 120,000 potential vaccinees. So we do have a bit of a backlog to catch up on. But I think if all stops are pulled out, yes, we should make it by the middle of May. I think the deadline would be the 16th of May, because from the 17th of May is when Phase 2 is due to start.
And Phase 2 starts, as you say, on the 17th of May. As things stand, from the report last night, the Health Ministry confirmed that only 318,670 health workers have been vaccinated. That's under the eNCA vaccination trial with Johnson & Johnson. As things stand, it looks as though we're likely to have an overlap, isn't it, between Phase 1 and 2?
Yes, I think we've got to be realistic. There will be an overlap. I think initially it was planned that there wouldn't be, but I think because of the pause, there will be. But I don't think that's going to materially affect the actual rollout program itself, even if there is a rollout overlap, I mean.
How confident are you, Prof, that the vaccination sites will have enough capacity to move at enough speed to keep up with the arrival of doses? I mean, for May alone, we're going to get these more than 325,000 doses every week, right? And then after that, government says we're going to get about 636,000 doses weekly. Will the centres be able to cope?
Yeah, I think that's the $64,000 question, Thembekile. You're right. I think that's really going to be the challenge, because I think we have secured vaccines now. Now the challenge is really to kind of roll it out as quickly as possible to the healthcare workers initially, and then the high risk, the high priority individuals, and Phase 2 after that. So we can just hope. I think they've certainly put a lot of work into it. I think there's been a lot of intense organization to see that the vaccine is distributed as fast as possible, and I think time will tell.
February, we had the issue with AstraZeneca, where efficacy was dramatically reduced against the variant identified in South Africa towards the end of 2020. Then Johnson & Johnson hit a snag when the United States said it was investigating possible links with blood clots in women in particular. Now we're receiving Pfizer today, but Pfizer is already having a bit of an issue, if you will, an investigation that's underway in Israel into a possible link with heart inflammation. 62 incidents reported so far. Is that something that South Africa, that your team is looking at quite closely?
You know, I think we need to look at all these kind of what we call safety signals. But they are extremely rare, both the blood clots as well as what we call the myocarditis, inflammation of the heart muscle. They're very, very rare. In fact, the heart muscle inflammation is really at this stage coincidental. It hasn't really been proven to be caused by the vaccine. But certainly all these safety signals are very, very rigorously looked at. It's what we call pharmacovigilance. It's the kind of monitoring after the vaccine has been rolled out and looking very, very carefully and very thoroughly for any adverse event. But at this stage, it's really nothing to worry about. These are extremely rare adverse events. So far, these vaccines have proven to be extremely safe.
And the argument from the FDA and yourselves in South Africa has been that, look, when it comes to these vaccines, the advantages of taking a vaccine far outweigh the potential risk. But I wonder how you convince people who are already skeptical about taking a vaccine. Some people saying, well, they were developed so quickly, that's why they're likely to cause issues. So how do you convince those people that taking the shot is better than not receiving a vaccination?
Yeah, I think it is a matter of communication and a matter of education. Look, I think the thing is, I think what you really want to get across is that, yes, these vaccines have been developed very rapidly, but that's because of the sophistication, the advance of science, of what we call vaccinology science of 2021. We've now reached such a sophisticated, in-depth level. Our science is so advanced that I think that itself is a reassurance of the safety of these vaccines. And never before have vaccines come under such close scrutiny as the present COVID vaccines. I've been in this game for many, many years now, decades, and this is really the kind of most advanced stage that we've reached in terms of not only developing the vaccines, but ensuring that they are safe. So I really think, from my experience, I can reassure the listeners and the viewers out there that these vaccines are extremely safe, despite these safety signals. I think that these safety signals themselves are an indication of how rigorously we are looked at to ensure that the vaccines are safe.
And when you look at the issues, I'll take Pfizer, for example, where, yes, there's no link confirmed yet with the issue of heart inflammation, but they're saying at this point it would appear that the incidence rate is higher among men 18 to 30 years old, right? You look at what we saw with Johnson & Johnson, where the issue with blood clotting was also among women about 18 to 48 years old. Are we headed to a situation where we're likely to have gendered vaccination rollouts, where one jab is more suitable for men and the other for women, do you think?
It has been considered, but because these are such rare events, the blood clots, 1 in a million doses of vaccine, that it probably is not going to be warranted. I think what has been instituted is that people that do have a tendency for having clots, thrombosis, that they should alert the vaccinators, and that they should be carefully watched, and also they should be monitored for symptoms, and the symptoms would be a persistent headache or persistent abdominal pain, because that particular thrombotic event can be treated, provided it's treated early. But again, it's so rare that it's probably not going to operationally, it's not going to warrant kind of separating a gender-based vaccination.
You got Pfizer as well in the last few weeks saying that one of the other things they want to do is start to get clearance for their vaccine for children, in some cases as young as 5. In South Africa, how big of a priority would the vaccination of children be?
No, I think that's going to be a low priority. Children tolerate this infection very, very mildly, or in fact without any clinical symptoms at all. So they really, even in a country like Israel, which has got a very advanced vaccination, they haven't at this stage thought of vaccinating children. So I think that's going to be very, very low, below the kind of last on the list. I don't think, certainly in South Africa, we're not going to look at that for a long time.
Just how real, Prof, is the probability of a virus mutation that could be resistant to all available vaccines?
That is a theoretical possibility. We've got our B1351, which has certainly got quite a significant resistance to vaccines and also to post-infection immunity. It is a possibility. I think it's very unlikely that it's going to be totally resistant to all vaccines. I think we don't really have any viruses which have developed to that degree a resistance to vaccines.
Finally, Johnson & Johnson is also, we've got an update from the health minister today saying that we're waiting, a batch that's awaiting dispatch in Gqeberha in the Eastern Cape currently. Yeah. That's going to undergo some form of assessment just to make sure that we've dotted all our I's and crossed our T's on the safety issues that have been raised so far. When you look at what's going on, what sort of assessments need to be done to make sure that we rule out the worst possible scenario for that vaccine?
Well, look, all these vaccines have to go to the National Control Laboratory for quality testing, which is quite a rigorous examination. And also, of course, our SAPRA, South African Health Product Regulatory Authority, they go through with a very, very fine cone. Right from the beginning, from the actual constituents, the glassware even, the diluents, all that goes up to make up the vaccine is very, very thoroughly assessed. So, it does go through this process in South Africa as well as, of course, internationally.
Will Johnson & Johnson in South Africa make that deadline then of being part of phase 2 by 17th May?
I think so. I think so. There was that problem in the United States where the FDA put a bit of a halt because on inspection there was some quality issue with one of the one of the facilities producing Johnson & Johnson. So internationally, of course, that results in a sort of a delay. But I think they probably will meet their deadline. I think so.
Can I get your take on something else, Prof, published by News 24 today, saying that some doctors are saying that the decision to pay practices 60 Rand per vaccination once the rollout for the general public begins could jeopardize the rollout because it's not feasible for them specifically as a practice. What's your take?
Well, Thembekile, I didn't even know about that. We really, as a vaccine ministerial advisory committee, not really involved in the actual administration of the rollout. So I'm not sure I can really comment. I'd like to comment, but I'm not sure I can comment on that.
Professor Barry Schoub, sorry to put you on the spot there. Thought I'd squeeze it in, but thank you so much for speaking to us. Professor Schoub is chairperson of the Ministerial Advisory Committee on COVID-19 vaccines, speaking to us, of course, ahead of the arrival later tonight of some 325,000 doses of the Pfizer jab, because phase 2 of our vaccine rollout for the over 60s is set to begin on the 17th of May.